Hello everyone, Foxing here. There's been an update to Marks, and I can say it is looking pretty up on the upside. Yeah. They've changed quite a lot of core mechanics to how Marks was working before, such as multi-shot is now a generator, which gives you back 2 focus every time you hit an enemy with it. So if there's 20 enemies, you'll get 40, which makes our AoE a lot better. Mark shot now also will hit all vulnerable targets, and when multi-shot is marking things, it will either mark everything or nothing, instead of just randomly marking things. So that's a pretty big change. On top of the marking, vulnerability, the debuff you put with mark shot, now lasts 30 seconds instead of 10 seconds. So you have a lot longer window to use aim shot. So that's about it for all of the core mechanic things. Uh, I would like to show you some of the artifact things, but they're not implemented yet, so that sucks. And your 13th talent also, or 13th trait on your artifact also costs 1 million artifact power, which is not farmable. It's like, I mean, I have 5,000 now, and you get, maybe 300 to, 450 if you're lucky in a dungeon, so that's not happening. Anyway, for talents now, steady focus has been nerfed by 30%. So instead of getting 50% bonus focus regeneration, you're now only getting 20%. And even though it's been nerfed quite a lot, it's still good for some things. And we'll talk about that later. Other than that, True Aim and Black Arrow, completely the same. The next row of talents, the same. The next one, Explosive Shot, is not the same as the old one. It is now basically Frozen Orb, except for when you send it out, it doesn't stop, or it won't stop moving when it hits a target. You have to reactivate it. If you don't, it does nothing. And that looks like this. It's basically just, a rocket, an explosive shot. Exotic munitions, same thing. Trick Shot is the new broadside, I think it was called, where aim shot will now bounce to all of your vulnerable targets instead of just in the really small area around it. The next important change is camouflage. You will no longer have a damage buff from exiting camouflage, which makes, Wyvern Sting for some dungeons and needing CC there, and Binding Shot be able to be used again. So that's, good there. Now, some new things is a talent called Patient Sniper. It increases your max focus pool by 30, and your vulnerable debuff now changes into something called Deadeye, which increases your aim shot damage for 6 seconds against things that have that on it. Heightened vulnerability, same thing as before. Careful aim is basically the exact same thing as what live marksmanship hunters now have. However, this is 20% instead of what it was. However, this is now 20% instead of, 50%, and all of the critical strikes that you deal will do 20% additional damage over 8 seconds. The next tier, Volley, actually does damage now. It's still a bit weak compared to Barrage in, again, all circumstances, but it does have a place if it's tuned right. We'll see. Lock and Load, same thing as before. Headshot has changed slightly. It's basically what Power Shot was, except for it doesn't have a knockback. Instead of being a huge single target damage and slightly to things in between, it's now main target takes 100% of the damage, and things in between take 50%. So, just like Power Shot. And Dark Ranger is still the same thing. Now, let's talk about how some of these things pair up with each other in the certain talents, or in the talent trees. Lock and Load right now, it's a bit weak It still works with your auto attacks instead of, using a spell, which I would really like to see that change happen. Maybe have it proc on crits of some kind of spell. So, it's not just a very low percent chance with, seemingly random results. Now, moving over to Headshot, um, at the moment it's dealing like 20% of the damage it should be, but I still think it was better in the previous build, because now, it's basically just Power Shot. And it has kind of an awkward place now that it's been moved against instead of Careful Aim and whatnot in the previous to updated version of this one. So it should be a nice focus dump. However, you don't really have any occurrences where it's like this would be a good time to use this. It's just an awkward focus dump. And on top of it just being kind of awkward to use, unless you have Patient Sniper to increase your max focus pool, you're going to be wasting focus with getting to 100 to use this at its max potential, which is wasted DPS. So maybe if it was like 20 to 90 instead of 20 to 100, otherwise it basically makes Patient Sniper the go-to 100% of the time if you're using Headshot, which, it doesn't sound too bad, but you're using Patient Sniper for a different reason than what it's generally meant to be used for. Which brings us to the next thing that we're going to be talking about is Patient Sniper Heightened Vulnerability. Heightened Vulnerability is basically the how should I put it? Like your target swapping or on the pole talent to get your marks up to 100%. However, with Patient Sniper, this one doesn't stack. It's 100% of the time going to be there after you use Mark Shot for 6 seconds. So you don't need to use this thing that doesn't actually benefit you at all, first one that's going to double your damage when target swapping. Because this one here, even though it's a lower duration, it actually does pan out a lot stronger than what you could ever get to achieve with Heightened Vulnerability. And you need Mark Shot to be procced on something anyway to get these 3 stacks, so it doesn't really have any place anymore because of Patient Sniper. Now, if Heightened Vulnerability was to be, swapped with exotic munitions, and, exotic munitions just changed to something or whatever, and then Heightened Vulnerability made this stack to 3 times, then, it could be useful. However, that's not the case. And while we're on this topic of things that are seemingly very unbalanced, Careful Aim, depending on the duration of a fight, or duration of how long something is at 80% or so, is very, very strong. Such as fights like Odin and I think it's Helia or whatever. Those fights take place where the boss is permanently going to have this up. Like Odin doesn't fall below 80%. The fight ends when he gets to 80%. So this is, it basically makes Marks Hunters the go-to have for Halls of Valor and go-to for Maws of Soul, because this is extremely overpowered when you take it into that circumstance. It's a flat 20% damage increase on top of 20% crit. So something needs to happen there. Now, that's just a general overall balance in class thing. But for these 3 talents here, Careful Aim is basically the go-to, because, it's just a lot of extra damage on the pole, and whatnot, but heightened vulnerability doesn't need to exist anymore because Patient Sniper is better in all circumstances. And the reasoning behind this is by the time you get mark shot and do all that stuff, the benefit of getting 3 shots or getting 3 stacks immediately is nullified by the fact that this one is basically getting 6 stacks in the same global. On top of having an extra 30 on your focus pool, which means you can back to back 3 aim shots at 150% instead of 75%, it makes this one by far the better target switching. And if you're going to be using True Shot, which gives you 100% chance to mark the target, you're going to have 100% uptime on the 150% damage bonus. So there's literally no comparison there. Now, I mean, it is nice that you have these certain niches for classes and certain fights that you can really, really excel at. But for a general balancing standpoint, it might be a bit too much. So that's my critique of this tier right here. Camouflage, again, doesn't have the 10% bonus when you leave it, so, that's fine there. Same as this one here. Far Strider, there's no more kill flip. So it's basically just a reduced cooldown whenever you start to get crits. Fine and dandy. But Explosive Shot, again, it just needs to have a higher damage. Maybe like the first target hit takes, like 200%, so it's worth casting on single target, as well as, AoE, because Trick Shot just simply outperforms it by so much. Because it's going to be hitting everything that's vulnerable. So if you have like 20 mobs, you're going to get, you're going to get 7 casts of aim shot in 30 seconds of what, Explosive Shot could do to those small things. And that's also if you perfectly get them all in the center. Now, exotic munitions, nothing has changed about it. I would really like to see it work with your spells. It has no place other than an awkward single target for, poisoned ammo. Because it could work really, really well with barrage and volley and, like multi-shot and stuff. But it just doesn't do anything. So I would like to see some changes to that. Same as, lock and load. It needs to work with spells instead of just auto attack bonuses that are, fucking trash. Pardon my language. But the final tier talents is Steady Focus, True Aim, and Black Arrow. The big changes here is that Black Arrow is actually useful again. So there's that. Steady Focus, though it does have a spot here, it only has a spot if volley does damage. If not, there's only 2 options in this tier. Regardless of, like, whatever. If volley isn't doing damage, then Steady Focus has no place here at all. Because Black Arrow, you can use it on cleave and get, 4 things rolling on the pole. And True Aim for single target is just, there's no comparison. You'll be using True Aim on nearly every fight that you can keep it up for, like, even half the time. Because Black Arrow doesn't really hit that hard. However, Black Arrow still does have a place. If you are cleaving, your Black Arrow is going to be the go-to. Or target swapping a lot, then, True Aim will be, not even going to be looking at it. So it is nice to see that Black Arrow, they made work. So overall, a bit of balance changes there, like steady focus with volley, patient sniper with headshot. There needs to be a couple tweaks there. Heightened vulnerability just needs to go. And while we're on the subject, A Murder of Crows and Dark Ranger, while they have nice aesthetics and whatnot, they don't really offer anything except for Dark Ranger. It the taunt that they have is just driving tanks insane in dungeons. That needs to be turned off, or a way to turn that off in dungeons. Because if it somehow pans out that Dark Ranger is the highest damage output that you have, then, a lot of people are going to be using it. And, if things are killing themselves because they're taunting stuff, and, moving things out of position because they're taunting, especially in a raid, that's not going to be good. And A Murder of Crows just it hasn't been worth a cast in forever, especially against Barrage. Barrage does more damage than A Murder of Crows does, and hits AoE, and just everything in front of you, and you can use it 3 times as much. So Murder of Crows also needs to be worked on. And who knows, if you make exotic munitions work with spells and lock and load work with spells, A Murder of Crows might be like, here's some extra procs or something. Just there doesn't seem to be a lot of talent synergy other than like headshot and patient sniper. And that's a bad synergy because you're only using it just so you don't cap your focus, other than the extra damage from aim shot, as well as trick shot not benefiting from vulnerable targets. That is one thing that just makes me upset and just disappoints me at the same time, because not only does this say it's damage from aim shot and it's from vulnerable targets, but doesn't actually benefit from them. And with patient sniper, it feels to me like it should be doing more. That's all. So now that all of that's talked about, the actual overall feel of the spec compared to last time, in the previous video, is definitely a lot better than what it was before. There's less fundamentals that are completely just bad. It's refreshing, actually, to go from that to this is 2 thumbs up. Because even though there is some cookie cutter things with this, there is still some options, and it's actually fun to play, which is something that should be very important with redesigning things, is that it should be fun, and it should be rewarding when you do something right. And with so many options with this build, like you can use Black Arrow, you can use Steady Focus, you can use True Aim, you can really set differences and like set personal goals to be like, yeah, I want my True Aim uptime to be a lot better, or I want my Black Arrow to I want to really push the timer on it or something like that. And I've been testing stuff for about give or take 4 hours since the update, because the servers were down when it first updated and all the jazz that comes with alpha. And the biggest thing I can say is it's definitely headed in the correct direction. With a couple more revisions of talents and a bit of tuning, I think Marks could be a solid, fun spec, where it's not like ridiculously overpowered, but in all like AoE, cleave, and single target, it can it has like 80%. It's not the top, but it's not the bottom. It's, higher middle ground, as it, generally Hunter usually is. So I think that's about everything I needed to really talk about with the update. The alpha feedback. It's, positive, but there are still some things that need to be worked on. And something to add that I just thought of after I was going to end this video, but as there isn't any implements of, a lot of the traits and stuff, something to do with the artifact here. When you use aim shot, there's a chance that the 6 arrows will cast and shoot at your target. I would somewhat like to see trick shot also have that, so where, maybe not every single target gets hit by the arrows, but definitely some interaction there, as it's supposed to be your aim shot hitting all of these things, so maybe just a proc coefficient there, or like when it does proc, when you use that aim shot and it's bouncing around, the arrows will also hit them like once or twice. Just something simple like that, just some good interaction between everything. So now that we've actually talked about all of this stuff, I'll demonstrate what most of the things are actually looking like with AoE builds, single target builds, and the cleave build. So at the moment, this is what you're generally going to be looking like when you're cleaving targets. You have black arrow because sometimes, like when an ad will spawn, you're still going to be cleaving, however you do need to be hitting that one as well, instead of just the boss. So true aim, you can't really use it there. As well as true aim not benefiting trick shot, because it's those targets that are going to be hitting, or going to be hit by the aim shot, instead of hitting from the main one and then actually ricocheting through. It's not like chain lightning damage. Although that is one interaction that could also be added, or something of the sort. We're taking Patient Sniper because you're not often going to be using aim shot, but when you do, you will have the double vulnerability on the target when you are doing it, so it is slightly more damage to the main target. And lock and load is whenever it procs, you'll get more benefit from it than just using headshot. So enough talking, I'll actually display some gameplay of that. Just, real simple. Just multi-shot for your generator. Keep black arrow up on the target whenever, your thing there procs. Make sure to use it. Lock and load. And barrage can be used. But I'm not actually sure about the numbers. Whether barrage actually does more damage than overall just using aim shot. So that's something I can really only see in logs, and I'm not logging on the alpha, or I don't have SCADA, because we alpha stuff. So anyway, that could be one thing, is just use barrage whenever it's off cooldown. Generally, I do think it probably will be something you do, but just generally keep your black arrow up, as many stacks as you can get on the main target you want to be hitting. Use your lock and load, and mark shot whenever it's up as well. So pretty simple there. Now for single target, you're going to be using true aim. You're also going to be using exotic munition for the unfortunate reason of explosive shot isn't worth using in single target, and it's just a passive damage increase. Trick shot doesn't actually do anything for, AoE, or for single target, I mean. And it is a toss-up between patient sniper and careful aim, duration of how long careful aim is up, and how often you can keep Deadeye up. Also really depends on which one is better. But generally speaking, patient sniper is going to be a solid choice. And for single target, you don't use barrage. Headshot, depending on how much the finalized damage is, it could be worth casting, but for right now, lock and load is definitely better. And that reason is, if you get a lock and load proc, you can use Mark shot and then follow it up with 4 aim shots back to back. Unfortunately, right now, when lock and load procs, it will use all of the procs instead of just one. So if you are seeing that, I'm not pressing it, twice and casting 2 instant aim shots at once. It is just using both the charges. So anyway, single target looks something like this. You don't want to cap your focus. Every time you use Mark shot, you want to make sure that you can use at least 2 aim shots right after it. Okay, well, the client just crashed, but we're talking about single target, and that was basically the entire single target. So not too difficult, but definitely, something to watch for. Interactions, it's kind of like arms with Colossus Smash. You're looking out for it, except for you can have it up a lot more times. Simple stuff. Now for the AoE build, that is like the mother of all AoEs, where explosive shot is actually worth casting. Volley would take the place of barrage here, except for right now, volley just isn't doing enough damage. I'm not sure the final version of volley will actually be worth casting ever, so something to work out there, or a revision of exotic munitions or whatever. And headshot as well, because lock and load, you're not going to be using trick shot enough if explosive shot is worth using. And let's just get into it. Gotta move that onto the bar. Now, depending on the actual final damage of how much each spell does, there can be, you either use barrage, then headshot, then explosive shot, or explosive shot, barrage, then headshot, which is probably going to be the order due to, just how long the cooldowns are. So anyway, that would probably look something like this. Explosive shot, then start barraging, and then you headshot, and then you use multi-shot, which is now a generator, and then you just use Mark shot when it's up, dump your focus as soon as you get it with a headshot, barrage when it's back up, headshot again, and then explosive shot, and that's about it. So that's for basically like extreme AoE, like Operator Thogar kind of AoE, where there's tons and tons of ad spawning that need to die, instead of just cleaving or prioritizing a couple big mobs. which is probably going to be what we're looking at for Scorpion, which was tested uh, 2 weeks ago, I think. But yeah, that is a huge ad fight. There's so many things spawning. It could have just been, it was things are spawning way too much or whatever. But, that's just an example of a fight where we would probably be using an AoE oriented build instead of just a cleave build. So I think that's everything now. If you have any questions or, whatever, just put it in the comments. And hope everyone has a good day and whatnot. Peace.